first, though, it is going to be feeling quite chilly out there. We'll see highs of 13 or 14 degrees in the south. As we go through Sunday evening, that cloud and rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland will continue to push in, affecting northwestern parts of England and into Wales later. But as we go into the week, higher pressure does start to dominate, but it'll be quite cloudy still, with temperatures close to average. Bye-bye.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you the chance to win everything you need to celebrate the festivities. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For your chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Saturday night, and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes, along with Will Kingston, Renee Hundekamp, Eunice Sarigiani, JJ Anisiobi, and tonight on the show, my friends...
Keir Starmer takes a knee to reparations demands.
The left really hate our police.
If the Commonwealth wants to be a gimme your wealth, I think we need to ask if we should be in it.
Was Israel's attack on Iran understated?
And net zero nutters may take away your meat.
It's 6 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. Welcome to the Saturday 5. All right, my friends. Now, this week we've got 5 headlines hotter than a Greggs pasty fresh out the oven, and dare I say twice as tasty. Expect the usual no-nonsense, no-filter banter as we take on the loons and legends of the week. And buckle up, because we're in for one hell of a ride this week. Unpredictable, unapologetic and guaranteed to leave someone mortally offended. Hopefully not you. Now, tonight on the panel, we're ticking every diversity box you can imagine. We've got a gay, we've got a woman, we've got a black man, we've got an Iranian, and even an Australian, although he's a white straight man, so we lose marks for that, of course. But hey, look at us. That's diversity, right? Without the corporate quotas. And unlike ITV's poor attempt, where loose women seems more like loosely the same opinion as their idea of diversity. That's them on screen now. I think their idea of diversity is probably the dresses, maybe. But here on the Saturday 5, we're promised every opinion under the sun, except the beige liberal talking head that you'll hear parroted on the BBC. Well, yes, joining me tonight are indeed Will and Renee and Eunice and JJ. But get ready, my friends, because we're going to dive headfirst into this week's circus. Because you know the drill. Each host outlines their argument about a chosen topic, then we'll all pile in and the fur will start to fly. But more importantly than any of our views is yours. Send yours to and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. And don't forget to ask your questions for Ask the Five, no topic off limits. But before we start tearing each other apart, here's your Saturday night news with Lewis Mackenzie.
Thank you very much, Darren. Good evening. It's 6 o'clock. I'm Lewis Mackenzie here in the GB newsroom. 4 arrests have now been made in London following a day of protests in the capital. The Met say 2 of the arrests were made at the Uniting the Kingdom demonstration, one for being in breach of a Public Order Act and breach of the peace, and another for racially aggravated public order offence. The other 2 arrests were made for common assault at the Stand Up to Racism counter-protest. Downing Street says escalation is in no one's interest after Israel conducted precise strikes on military targets in Iran overnight. The strikes against the Iranian regime come after Tehran launched a barrage of more than 180 ballistic missiles at Israel 3 weeks ago. Terror group Hamas has condemned Israel's attack on Iran, calling it a violation of Iran's sovereignty and a threat to regional security. But the IDF says they'll do whatever is necessary to defend their state. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, says the UK is monitoring the situation and warned Iran must not respond.
Israel does have the right to defend itself, but we are urging and have been urging all sides to show restraint. Iran should not respond. We will continue to work with allies to de-escalate the situation across the region.
In other news, the PM has denied he was plotting a war against Middle Britain after suggestions that those who make an income from property or shares do not fall within his definition of working people. It comes after the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, insisted that Sir Keir Starmer is in fact a working person and could be among those protected from the government's controversial tax hikes in the upcoming budget. Now, a mother of a teenager killed in the Nottingham stabbings has branded an episode of the BBC Panorama as shameful. Emma Webber, whose 19-year-old son Barnaby, was seen on the left here, was killed last year. She says the families were not properly consulted about the episode. The documentary features an interview with the killer's family and has now been nominated for a range of journalism awards.
He loved his family and we love him and we miss him so much that I don't think there's any words that could ever convey how much that boy is loved and missed. But what we will do is we will get justice. Wes Streeting wrote to the Director General of the BBC with his concerns when he found out a week before that this was airing and that we hadn't been involved. You know, that there's no duty of care to us, despite what they say in their right to reply statement. And I can't believe that that's our BBC that have done that to us. You would think that Panorama would have learned from past mistakes.
Well, the BBC has responded to that interview with this statement saying, "We have the deepest sympathy for the families, and the Panorama team has been extremely mindful in the sensitivities in handling this programme. This investigation was very much in the public interest, and the documentary has been produced in accordance with the BBC's editorial guidelines. Well, those have been your latest GB News headlines. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. Now it's back to the Saturday 5.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers, Lewis. It's Saturday night, my friends, and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes, and I can promise that you're in for a very lively show. We're going to crack on with tonight's first debate. Which one of you is going to unleash hell first of all?
I'll kick off, Darren.
Yeah. Take it away.
Lady and gentlemen, this morning, Keir Starmer, along with 55 other Commonwealth leaders, signed a communique that will force the United Kingdom into formal conversations regarding slavery reparations. It said, and I quote, "The time has come for a meaningful, truthful and respectful conversation towards forging a common future based on equity." Now, Starmer's ruled out cash compensation, but forgive me if I'm sceptical. He's already developed a habit for backflips, and in addition, there are plenty of ways of delivering non-cash compensation that would still leave the United Kingdom shortchanged, like loan forgiveness, for example. But the cash is almost beside the point. The point is, this was an opportunity for a British leader to get up on the world stage and proudly and unequivocally defend his country's history and its values, and he crumbled. Instead, he curled up into the default position of the modern left, which is to express shame and guilt for our past. This is what he should have done. He should have taken that communique, ripped it up, and instead politely requested a thank you to the United Kingdom from the members of the Commonwealth. Thank you for ending the slave trade and paying astronomical amounts of money to do so. Thank you for delivering the rule of law and democracy. Thank you for raising living standards. Thank you for quantum leaps forward in education and health. Thank you for protecting the rights of women. Thank you for bringing civilization to uncivilized corners of the globe. And you know what? We will not even send you a bill for it. Slavery was abhorrent, but the British Empire, on balance, was a force for tremendous good. And I'm sick and tired of our leaders not standing behind that self-evident truth.
Well, hang on, I have to let JJ have a bite of the cherry there, because JJ winced when you said that.
Just you saying about bringing civilization to uncivilized parts or corners. With respect, I know you're Australian, but I'm sure there's lots of the world you haven't seen. And for an Australian to come here and tell us about our British history and how they civilised everywhere that was uncivilised, plenty of places in this world may not meet the same level of civilisation that you think is civilised, but there are still fine and happy places. I don't think it's anyone's right, and it's our right as British people and to protect everyone's freedoms for every other country to live as they wish to be lived. That's what I take umbrage with.
Yeah, this when I say civilised, number one, raised quality of life. We raised living standards.
We also killed
life expectancy.
We also killed plenty.
But this is the problem with this debate, in that we don't look at it as a cost-benefit analysis. We either say someone was entirely good or entirely bad. We need to say that, of course, there were terrible things in our past, but on balance, the benefits that the British Empire brought to the world,
from our perspective.
From the perspective of objective metrics like life expectancy, like education levels, like literacy levels, like health standards. These are all objective things we measure. That
how much obesity do we have in the Western world? Do you think that's a good health standard?
Well, I'm probably going to blame the Americans as that, but
reparations, listen, I'm not saying we should have reparations or not. I'm not really fussed either way. But Italy paid reparations to countries. After World War II, lots of the loser countries had to pay reparations that are still being paid by some countries now. Yeah. USA got paid reparations from Italy. Yeah. Well, why is that OK? But then for us to say, well, no, everyone else who wants it, we're not going to give it. We're not going to give it.
Reparations were paid to people who were directly affected by the wrong. This is reparations being paid to people who have no connection to slave trade.
In 2022, Italy was still paying $5 billion in reparations to Libya. People who were around for when the 3 decades when Libya was occupied by Italy were not still around.
Well, Eunice, can I ask you a question? Because there was once upon a time a Persian Empire, right? Do you think actually the Iranians would entertain the idea that they should pay some form of reparations to the countries that they colonised?
No, not at all, because, and this is where I disagree with you, my friend, because at what point do we stop? Every single country in the world at one point was conquered by another. Okay, so am I owed reparations from the Arabs because they conquered the old Persia? Or, you know, should the Romans pay reparations to the British? So on and so forth. So I just think like this idea, like how far are we going to go back in history? And as my friend said over there, the British Empire was a net positive for the world. Okay? Overall, they kick-started world trade. They
invaded many countries.
They globalized science and, you know...
Science existed before the British Empire. We can go way back before that.
I think we're missing the point here because I think it depends whose viewpoint we're taking about whether we decide if the British Empire was a net positive or negative. But I think the point here is that the British actually paid out an awful lot of money to end slavery. Now, you might argue that they had to pay that to the slave owners, but that's what they had to do to end slavery. They put our soldiers in the way of boats. They died. Lives were lost stopping slavery. So, and now we are so far down the line. What am I paying for? I'm paying for the sins of people I didn't even know if we give reparations.
But then, JJ, as well, though, like that you yourself would be paying your taxes over to people who you've never met, never encountered, never had anything to do with. You know, you weren't a slave owner or anything like that.
Yeah.
How the hell would you make it equitable?
Yeah, I don't, and this is what I say. I don't think that I'm not in support of reparations, my friend. I'm not saying we should. I'm not saying we should pay reparations, but I'm saying for people to call for it, I think there should be a discussion. I don't think it's abhorrent that Keir Starmer won't come out and say we're definitely not going to do it. I think it's a conversation to be had. And...
Well, hang on. Who thinks that Starmer should have said I ain't signing the communique? Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because this is
So you think the conversation should be had at a Commonwealth level?
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. And if we want to keep the Commonwealth together, which I'm sure we all do...
Get on to that. But, Renee, what was the point you were going to make there?
So I just think that we have to leave this in the past now and accept that we played our part in it and then we played our part in stopping it, and it's time to go forward. And actually, I think if you were going to give, and there are estimates of it being £17 trillion, the reparation bill, if you're going to give that much of our money away to other people, we'll need a referendum.
But you know what I would say is I think they can, the leaders of especially Caribbean nations can smell that there's blood in the water. And what I mean by that is Starmer giving up the Chagos Islands has made us look entirely weak, and having a foreign secretary who has made these kind of sound bites in the past around these issues, they think, well, easy money.
Yeah, they know that instinctively in the DNA of the Labor Party they want to do this. It is all part of this wider narrative to have shame on our history and to be inherently dismissive of
It's also divisive. If you look in places like California, where they decided to give anyone who could prove they had some ancestry that was enslaved $1 million. What does that do? It divides a community. Everybody's then scrabbling around in, Ancestry.com trying to find someone who was possibly a slave.
It always reminds me of the Elizabeth Warren, a senator in the US, findings. She said she was related to the Native Americans.
Pocahontas.
And Trump called her Pocahontas, and it turns out she had 0.00000 something.
I actually have more Native American in me than her. I have 1% Native American. I don't have DNA test.
This is the point, and when we start getting into these very ugly conversations about percentages of ethnicity, it leads us down a very dark path that I don't think we want to go down.
All right, well, let's continue down that dark path, because I am going to be quite controversial in this, but hear me out, because Rob has just messaged in. Rob says, Darren, Starmer is more interested in the world stage than the United Kingdom and has gone power mad. Now, I think that's the issue here. The world stage. Why do we talk so often about needing a seat at the table? I'd quite like my table to be a bit damn better and comfortable in this country. Should we not be focusing on that instead? Do you ever get the feeling, my friends, that talking about the Commonwealth and the UN, it could be a whole load of them, the Commonwealth itself wants a symbol of shared history. I think it's now just a line of leaders with rattling begging bowls saying, actually, Britain owes us some pennies. We're told that we're responsible for all the world's ills, as Will has outlined, and surprise, surprise, it's our money that's the solution. But if this is all the Commonwealth has become, right, to talk about these issues, or to talk about King Charles's penchant for net zero and all these other things that are going to make us colder and poorer, then is it time to ask ourselves, are these still partnerships worth holding on to? As the PM and the Foreign Secretary rub shoulders in Samoa, some of these leaders are demanding those reparations for wrongs that took place hundreds of years ago. I tell you, my friends, my granddad was down a mine when he was a kid. Should I ask for reparations for that as a form of slavery? My ancestors died actually down pits. Clearly, there is a sense that there is blood in the water and Starmer is a weak, lame duck. They just forget Britain didn't just leave footprints. We left common law, we left railways, we left ports, we respected education institutions. And it's funny how these assets still in use today are totally sidelined and ignored. We need to talk about each of these institutions that see Britain as a cash cow. The UN, the Commonwealth. I could go on and on and on. Don't get me started on Davos and the World Economic Forum. They see Britain as the ultimate cash cow. So I say maybe it's time to cut them loose. Loyalty is a two-way street, and right now it feels like we're the only ones playing the toll. I'm absolutely sick. The UN, the ECHR, the Commonwealth, the EU, Britain's soft power, superpower. We need to actually focus on these things. A seat at the table. You sound like you've swallowed Lord Mandelson. We've got our own issues here. Let's deal with them, eh?
Darren, here's my challenge with this. There's the practical side of things as to whether the Commonwealth is really valuable anymore, and I think we can all agree it's of relatively limited use. But there's a deeper meaning behind the Commonwealth that reflects British and Commonwealth history, and it's that modern incarnation of our history that I feel if you just rip it away, it's just another thing that we're slowly tearing down.
Listen, the only thing I feel sad about is that it was very dear to our late Queen's heart, and that makes me feel sad. But I think, actually, I can't think of a single thing that the Commonwealth doesn't strive to better democracy, for example, and all these other things. If you look across some nations in the Commonwealth, you can't argue that they are open, free and not corrupt.
But I would argue that nor are we anymore.
Well, I mean, you could argue to a certain extent. I'm talking pilfering from the state in certain countries. That's why, actually, they say, oh, well, Britain left us poor. No, actually, I'm afraid in many cases, a lot of your own leaders have left you poor.
You see, I think, thinking about the history, the Commonwealth actually is a beautiful example of how we came after the war and we got into a situation where Britain was being accused all of the time of being this great coloniser who did all of these bad things. And I think the Queen, who brought this all together, demonstrated actually that we are one of the most open and forgiving societies in the world, and we brought together countries that would never be teammates at the table, really, from all races, all different cultures. And I think the Commonwealth, from that perspective, is something that we should be proud of. And I think my gut says, Darren, that we should keep it. That doesn't mean we should just bend over any time one of them says, oh, we need reparations. But I do think the Commonwealth is a force for good, and I really enjoy the Commonwealth Games.
I think, again, we're looking at it from our eyes as British citizens. I wonder in the Commonwealth countries how they view us, because if being part of the Commonwealth, it really should mean that if you are from India, for example, you should be able to get a visa to come to this country to study, to work with relative ease.
Why should it mean that?
Because part of the Commonwealth essentially is just an extension of this country.
Well, I'm sorry, that backs up my argument of why we should leave. I don't think we should do that at all.
Yeah, I'm not sure it should.
India have billions, over 1 billion people living in it.
Listen, I understand what you're saying. I'm just literally putting forward the point of, if you look at the same way as, let's say, take North America. If you're American or Canadian, there's a tie within those that you can pretty much travel freely between the two. The Commonwealth is an extension of this country. We cannot have it. We look at it from our perspective, and we're saying Britain's done great for all these countries. What are they doing for us? Well, if you think that from our perspective, how do people who are on the other side of the coin look at us? Because it's not just a case of down to us to decide whether we say the Commonwealth.
Go to India tomorrow and work without a visa.
No, absolutely you can get a visa. However, but we can get visas relatively easy to go to India and go to any Commonwealth countries. The Commonwealth countries, many of the member states, cannot come to this country as easy as we can go to theirs. That's factual.
So can any of you, you're all big fans of the Commonwealth. Can any of you list all member states of the Commonwealth?
Oh, I'm not a fan of the Commonwealth. I think it should be pulled apart.
But you said it's an extension of ourselves, right? But we know nothing about this institution.
But what I'm saying is, Darren, for people like Renee who support the Commonwealth, think it's great, we should keep it. I'm saying, well, OK, but the Commonwealth is what it's supposed to be, is an extension of this country.
Because next year, it's Ghana's turn, I think, to be the Secretary-General of the Commonwealth, of the institution itself. And guess what? They're in favour of reparations. elections. So this debate is going to go on and on and on, and Starmer gets weaker and weaker and weaker, and I think we suffer as a consequence. And I'm telling you right now, the British people will not stand for it. They will see this as a naked attempt to fleece the nation. And I worry that all of these institutions are doing that. You know, the ECHR telling us we can't have border policies. The UN telling us that actually, you know, we don't have a right to defend ourselves from so-called human rights abuses.
Yeah. Darren, I don't think this is a problem with the Commonwealth as much as how we're approaching the Commonwealth under a weak leader at the moment. This could actually be a wonderful vehicle for soft power for the UK if they said, right, we are the natural leader of the Commonwealth. Let's actually get this group of 56 member countries together, get them on the same page and be a viable alternative.
But is that not a new form of colonialism, would you argue, JJ? As in saying Britain is the natural leader of the Commonwealth? They would argue that's outdated, wouldn't they?
No, I don't think so, because essentially now what you'd have is leaders in those countries. It's not a case of Britain making a rule and those people having to just go along with it. There's leaders in those countries who can now stand up and say, no, we don't agree with that, we're not doing it. We're not going to have your judges tell us our rules anymore.
True. All right, OK, we'll move on. Still to come, though, my friends, Israel targeted Iran overnight. So what's the latest from the Middle East? Eunice has got a bee in his bonnet and he's going to unleash it shortly. But next, the verdict in the Chris Cabba case has this week reopened the conversation about policing in the country. Renee has some things to say. We'll be debating all of that next. You're with the Saturday 5. We're live on GB News.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This week, Free Speech Brighton, a sister group of the Free Speech Union, claimed that they were kicked out of a pub in the city for discussing trans issues in schools. The group booked a room in a pub for an evening of speeches and discussion when they claimed security guards came and asked them to leave after one speaker began to talk about this topic. Now, a clip of the evening was in fact posted to social media. Can you give us some background to what happened, what the event was for, and why you booked it?
Our normal pub was being refurbished, so about 3 weeks ago I went in and booked a local pub for a meeting, and they didn't ask any questions about what sort of meeting. It was in a back room. It was mainly secluded from the rest of the pub, so I thought it would be fine. But anyway, they didn't ask any questions. They took my booking. We arrived, I set up. The first speaker started speaking, who's a retired teacher who was concerned about trans in schools and how that affects children. But she was talking purely about children. She was not talking about adults who have protected characteristics, obviously. And then towards the end of her speech, I became aware of security guards standing behind me in the middle room. So I went to have a quick word with them and see what they wanted. And they said, we've had a complaint. And I said, what's the complaint? And they wouldn't say. Then they said, will you come and talk to the landlord? So I went to the front of the bar and they indicated this chap was the landlord, but he looked about 20, so I don't think he was the landlord. So I said, I hear you have a complaint about us. Can you tell me what it is? And he couldn't.
That sounds very Kafka-esque, as though you've committed a crime, but they can't tell you what the crime is.
Well, that's what I couldn't understand, because, you know, obviously they can't tell you who the complainant is, but they should be able to tell you what the complaint is.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think
think I saw
Oh,
him.
welcome back to the Saturday Five. That was an abrupt entrance, wasn't it? But I'm here with you. Thank you for being here. Now, the emails about tonight's topics. John says, Darren, when are your Viking ancestors going to repay the Cornish, the Scots, the Irish and the Welsh, who were the original inhabitants of the British Isles? Well, I'm afraid I'd have to go back some time. But the other comments here coming in on that issue, and boy, oh boy, has this got you all animated. Mike says, who is a member, thank you, Mike, Darren, Starmer should have ripped up that communique immediately. Cutting them loose is exactly what China and Russia want, though, which is a point Renee just made. Strengthen numbers, especially in the Caribbean. No reparations payable should be the statement and move on. Mike, my issue with that would be we're fooling ourselves if we think that there isn't already a massive hold in form of loans and all the rest of it in Africa, and especially when it comes to the Chinese. It's already happening. Commonwealth, well, about as much use as a chocolate teapot when it comes to that debate. Right, anyway, we'll move on. Thank you for your messages. Please do keep them coming in. Up next, though, well, Renee's going to take it away.
I'm going to take it away. So it transpires today that firearms officers who usually step in and help out the Met Police when they're needed are refusing to do so. They think it's too high risk and they don't want their lives ruined in the way that they've seen their colleague Martin Blake's life destroyed this week. After he was cleared this week of murdering Chris Cubber, there was no shortage of left-wing voices quick to step up and talk about Cubber as if he were a hero. A black man shot by a white policeman. Surely that must be black man is hero, white policeman the villain. But Cubber wasn't a hero. He was a gangland thug with a string of convictions that started when he was just 13. And days before he was sadly killed by a policeman on the streets, he shot a man in a crowded nightclub. He wasn't an upstanding member of the black community. The majority of the black community are law-abiding citizens who will be equally horrified, as we are, by the violence that the likes of Cubber are bringing to our streets. So why are the likes of Diane Abbott, Jeremy Corbyn, the BBC, of course, I could go on, standing up and actually deifying this man as they destroy the police that are actually out there defending us in what is a very thankless task? They do the firearms job as volunteers. They get no extra money for doing it, and in Martin Blake's case, they now have a gangland bounty on his head. No one deserves to die, let's be clear, at the end of a bullet on the streets of London. Not Chris Cubber's bullet, and he was firing those around a few days before, and not the bullet of a policeman. But it's a dangerous job, tensions are high, these things sadly happen. We need to defend our police when they stand up to defend us and put themselves in danger. And frankly, if firearm officers tomorrow all march to Downing Street and lay their guns on the doors of number 10, not only will I support them, I fully understand them, and we should support them too, and the left should apologise.
Well, hang on, Renee, because I was on the protest today and, well, I tried to. I couldn't get into Westminster Square.
Do you look too
to
far
Parliament
right?
Square, maybe. But I did get on the counter-protest, so clearly not far-righty enough. And I heard a lot of rhetoric. There was a woman who had been campaigning around this issue, and she said that actually it was an extermination of Mr. Cubber, and that actually, you know, the surrounding themes of gang membership and all these other things, he wasn't ever charged for anything like that, so...
Well, he has been to prison for violent offences. He had a domestic violence...
Not for shooting someone, right?
But they did have him on CCTV doing it.
So do you have any sympathy for that argument whatsoever, that actually this has done more to damage and trust in British policing with black communities?
Well, I think it's done much to damage British policing because all of the voices that people are hearing are saying exactly what you've just said. They're not saying this is a high-octane job. It was 13 seconds where they felt like they were at risk. He did not get out of the car and put his hands up. They felt like he was going to continue using his car as a battering ram.
One of the signs that someone had on this counter-protest march, and I wasn't there as a supporter, which you probably would have guessed, but, you know, I'll just put that on the record. And one of the signs that I saw said, prisons disappear people, not problems. And I thought, Who's causing the problems? That's why they're in prison.
But this is the whole thing, in that the facts around this have now seemed like are irrelevant compared to the desperation of so many on the left to have a George Floyd moment and basically to import American racial issues into the United Kingdom. They've discounted all of the facts around the case and they just instantly say, this is our chance to create that BLM moment Mark II in the United Kingdom.
So, if we're talking just purely on facts, the car was stationary when he was killed. We saw the video footage of him ramming, but when the bullet was fired and entered into his head, the car was stationary. I think everything about him, his criminal past and everything else, of course, I don't think there's any black people in this country who would support him. If the police had known it was that criminal and that man who had, from the video footage we've seen of him entering a nightclub and shooting people in the legs, I think that'd be relevant to the argument. But as the police didn't know who he was, all they knew was that the car had been involved in a shooting.
But they did know that the car was involved in it.
Yeah, they knew the car had been involved in a shooting. But the car was stationary, as I say, when Chris Cabba was shot. So what some people then will say is, well, look at Raoul Moat. He shot someone, he then shot a police officer, he then injured someone else. The police got him into a field and negotiated with him for 6 hours, even though they knew he was with a weapon. So why, in that situation with Raoul Moat, is it OK for them to negotiate for 6 hours? In this situation where it was a black guy behind the wheel...
He didn't have a 2-ton weapon sitting under his feet.
Neither did Chris Cabba.
Well, he did.
No, he didn't. There was no weapon in the car. That's the whole point. He was unarmed. There was no weapons in the car.
No, I'm talking about the car.
Oh, right, you're talking about the car.
That he could have rammed them with at any point, regardless of whether he was trapped in or not. He could have got out of the car, JJ. He could have. Look, I don't want him shot.
Yeah, could have. But the fact is, when he was shot, he wasn't. I'm not defending Chris Cabba. I think his actions as a human have been deplorable from everything I've read about him. But at the moment that he was shot, the car was stationary.
Well, do you not find the argument that I was hearing on this counter-protest today, though, really patronising, that they say that, you know, the whole black community is aggrieved? Is there such a thing as the black community?
No.
That's a patronised... I would argue that that's quite a racist assertion.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's a racist assertion or not, but I would say that no one black person, including myself, speaks for the whole black community in the same way that Will doesn't speak for every single Australian. You know what I mean?
Well, do you think this would be as big a story if it was a white person being shot by the police? And I don't think it would be, because, you know, every single time they have this obsession, and as my friend said, they want to have a BLM moment in this country. Where they want to play the victims all the time and they play identity politics. And you saw that with Sydney Wilson the other day, where the BLM activist said, oh, well, she was shot by the police, and then the body cam footage comes out, she's slashing a knife. So the police officer had no option but to shoot her. And I think, like, sometimes you just have to allow police officers to do their work without playing identity politics.
Well, hang on,
and also
that's the main point.
Yeah.
I think you had did you have a picture to show us? So, well, anyway, the firearms officers are saying that they don't feel comfortable using their weapons.
Yeah. Because now they're scared. Look, what we must realise is that in the UK, we have very few police officers who are armed, and we actually fire them at 0.01% of call-outs.
Yeah.
It is a highly charged... I'm not saying that, you know, they can go around willy-nilly shooting people, but that was a highly charged situation. Even if he made a mistake, to name him was absolutely disgraceful, and he's now got a bounty on his head.
And, you know, if he didn't want to get shot, he could have held his hands up and surrendered, right, ultimately.
Yeah.
OK, right, still to come tonight, my friends. Will there be civil unrest if Labour forces Britons to eat less meat? Ed Miliband might be on the march. But next, the IDF struck at the heart of Iran with military sites being targeted. We'll be discussing the escalating conflict in the Middle East. You're with the Saturday 5. We're live on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we look ahead to Sunday, we will have outbreaks of rain in the northwest, brighter elsewhere, but it will be feeling chillier, especially compared to Saturday. Having a look at the bigger picture then, we have this cold front sinking its way south and eastwards, introducing some cloud and outbreaks of rain. That will linger across parts of northwest England into Wales, but as it sinks its way southwards, actually it will tend to fizzle out. So many places overnight tonight seeing largely clear skies and staying largely dry as well. But it will be feeling colder out there. We may even see some mist and fog, but also some pockets of frost, especially across the north to start Sunday morning. But for many of us, it is a bright start to the day, with the exception of the far north of Scotland, where we hold on to quite a few showers. Brighter further the east you go, and then across Northern Ireland, we've got cloudier conditions coming through into the west, but holding on to the clearest skies towards the far east. Elsewhere, though, many places are seeing plenty of sunshine to start Sunday morning. Maybe some mist and fog patches, but they'll soon clear away to leave much of England and Wales a fine Sunday with plenty of autumnal sunshine. But through the afternoon, it will be turning cloudier and gloomier across Northern Ireland into northwestern Scotland, with outbreaks of rain and a bit more of a breeze picking up too. Otherwise, for many of us, it's a chillier day out there, highs of 13 to 14 degrees, especially towards the south. But as we go through into Monday, it is going to be quite a gloomy, murky picture out there. A lot of low cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle. There may be some glimmers of sunshine just developing towards eastern areas. But as we go through Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll start to see higher pressure building. But there is a lot of cloud and some fog as well. Bye-bye.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. As always, thank you very much for your messages. A lot of people are asking the question, would the Chris Cabot controversy, the factor that a firearm was used, have been so controversial if it had been a white man?
No.
A white gang member?
It wouldn't have been in this country because the majority of people are white, and there's more police force used against people of colour than there are white people. It's less of an anomaly.
Yeah, but also...
And do black people commit more crime in London?
No.
But also, you know, Roland Fryer...
JJ.
God, sorry.
There's this Harvard black professor called Roland Fryer that actually proved in America black people are killed at a lesser rate when they get stopped by the police. So this whole narrative that it's a racism problem.
Well, that's America, though. Yeah. It's completely different to here.
Well, on your topic later on, David says, I'm a meat eater. I've always been a meat eeater and always will be a meat eater.
Good for you,
End
David.
of. If Ed Miliband wants to dictate to me what I should eat, then I will dictate to him where he can shove his head. I won't read out what the rest of that says, David. Right, who's gonna go next?
It's gonna be me, Darren.
Oh,
so
going to Iran.
Yeah, so Israel striked Iran yesterday, but the attacks were very understated, in my opinion, because they struck some specific locations in Tehran and in Mashhad and a few other places. However, it was very understated, and I just wonder whether it was American pressure that led to Israel's having such an understated attack on the Islamic Republic. Because as you can remember, there was some really highly classified information leaked about 2 or 3 weeks ago by an Iranian by the name of Aryan Tabatabai, which worked at a very high level in the intelligence of the United States. So now there are accusations that she could be a spy, and she released these papers on purpose to stop Israel from striking the Islamic Republic. However, I just think that the Biden administration has tried to appease the Islamic Republic, and he's almost tied Netanyahu's hands behind his back to the point he can't respond in the way that he wants. So,
yeah, I think that's a good point. Are they proven allegations, the spy?
Well, they've been leaked on Telegram. It's a whole investigation going on. It's not just her, it's also this guy called Maya Beta.
OK, so they are allegations at this stage.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they are allegations.
I don't want to get sued by some,
Yeah, no. But at the end of the day, I just feel like it was very ironic that they released these papers as Israel was about to strike them. So,
but I do think you're onto something there, because apparently Israel are saying they're not willing to get back into negotiations with Hamas at this moment, in obviously relating to Gaza, because they want to see whether or not Trump is going to win the White House. And if Trump wins the White House, well, I think Hamas are cooked. Frankly. So that's an interesting point on the how much the American presidency impacts what happens next.
I do think, I mean, when I woke up to that story this morning and saw it evolving, my initial thought was that Israel have actually worked within the parameters that they have been given by the US, because they didn't go near any petrochemical sites, they didn't go near the nuclear sites, they didn't escalate this into World War III. And Iran don't want World War III. They're not in a position where they can take that on. So it's almost like they've allowed Israel to save face and strike, but at the same time...
I think this is the missed opportunity, though, because this gave them a plausible reason to actually attack those nuclear sites and set back that nuclear program in the way that they may not have in the future. I wonder whether they'll actually rue this missed opportunity.
Well, no, but how could they? Because President Biden would have got his knickers in a twist.
However, I do think...
No, I shouldn't say that.
I do think that Netanyahu is waiting for Trump to get elected, so he can strike the nuclear facilities.
What happens if he doesn't get elected?
Well, that's the problem, so you never know.
Kamala, what does she think about Israel?
I mean, she's the one that said, don't go to Rafah, and then where Yahya Sinwar was. So, you know, I
head
think...
of Hamas.
Yeah, exactly.
There, exactly. I mean, JJ, where are you at on all of this? Do you think actually it's just going to get 10 times worse?
Well, a couple of years ago, Biden was investing US dollars into Iran and neighbouring areas, trying to get them to produce more oil so he can lower the price of petrol. I think they follow the dollar, and that is all he's really, truly concerned with. You've got Keir Starmer coming out today or yesterday saying Iran should not retaliate. And then people are going to counter that with, but when Israel were attacked, you said Israel has the right to defend themselves. I don't think this war is going to end because we sit down and have proper diplomacy. I think it's going to end with perhaps Trump coming in and saying what's best for America, and that's what's going to decide the final fate.
Well, I mean, you could argue that actually... Is there an argument that it wouldn't be better for America for there to be a long, protracted war, as far as, you know, economic stability is concerned?
Well, they still make a lot of money during wartime, as we know, with the Americans, And once all of that region needs to be rebuilt, it's the American contractors are going to go in there and make flood loads of money.
Eunice, where do you see the Saudis and other allies, well, recent allies of Israel, you know, that's
Abraham
probably
Accords,
a bit of a generous way of putting it. But do you see a loosening of those ties that were signed under the Trump administration, or do you think that's there to stay now? Do you think this changes anything, this war?
No, I just think this whole Gaza-Hamas war with Israel was a brilliant strategic move by the Islamic Republic, because the Abraham Accords were going to normalize relations between the Saudi countries and Israel, which would have isolated Iran. So what do? They go and fund Hamas to be able to carry out the attacks on the 7th of October. And I truly believe this because, look, now Israel is almost done with Hamas and they're almost done with Hezbollah. But then if they don't manage to take out the Islamic Republic will regroup, and in 2 or 3 years' time, they'll be back stronger. So I think this was a missed opportunity. And as you said, like, you know, Biden used to work under President Carter, which caused the revolution in Iran. So, you know, you never know. They might have an incentive for them to keep the Islamic Republic in power.
Grumpy Grandad agrees with Will that Israel's missed a trick. They should have taken out Iran's nuclear program. And I'll be getting in trouble for reading out Grumpy Grandad because there's accusations of favouritism going on in this chat. But right, we're going to get to the news now. But still we're not actually. In 15 minutes we are. I'm getting ahead of myself. Still to come tonight, though, in our big interview, we're going to be discussing with a military veteran an issue that's got a lot of you very animated. The Royal British Legion's decision to sell that Pride poppy, as well as hire a diversity and inclusion manager and be involved with Stonewall's Diversity Champion Leadership Board. Next, though, will Labour face public unrest if they encourage Brits to eat less meat? That's what the Tories are saying. Well, you're with the Saturday 5. We're live on GB News.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Penelope's, which is situated in the sophisticated Hotel Armano in Covent Garden, delivers punchy dishes from the executive chef Fez Ozalgan. London-born, she's of Turkish Cypriot heritage, and at the tender age of 16, she enrolled at Catering College. So, it's lovely to see you, Fez. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
So you're now in a very prestigious position. I'm always impressed that in the world of chefing, it's possible to get to very senior positions quite young, if you're good enough. Talent is rewarded, is it not?
Definitely, yeah. It does take a lot of hard work, for sure. But, yes.
When did you know that you wanted to be a chef?
Honestly, because my parents have a cafe in Barking. And I used to go there when I was younger, in school holidays and weekends to help them. And actually, I'll be honest, I just used to really admire everyone calling my dad chef, and that's what I wanted.
And what about your food inspirations? Because I believe the food that you produce now is what? Mediterranean influenced and also to some extent Middle East influenced?
Yeah, and Spanish as well at Penelope's, yeah. So our concept at Penelope's, our CEO, Ariel, he is Israeli, but he grew up in Marbella. So, yeah.
These are the great influences.
Yeah.
What have you brought here today?
OK, so we have our sea bream tartare, which is a really good inspiration of both Spanish and Israeli. It's marinated with harissa, and it's served with a really nice gazpacho sauce, caviar on top.
I wonder whether the camera can see that. It is the most gorgeous coloured sauce on top of my sea bream tartare. That's marvellous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you very much for each and every one of your messages. Well, Catherine says, why don't you get Grumpy on to be one of the voices of the people on Nana's show? Well, I will put that through to Nana. But again, I'll be accused of favouritism for Grumpy Grandad. I'm telling you, you're going to get me in trouble. And, well, there's loads of questions. Rory says, I'm a vegetarian and I don't care if people eat meat or not. Governments should just let people live their lives. Well said, Rory. If you want to immiserate your dinner plate, you do that. But I don't want to. No, I'm just kidding, Rory. I'm just kidding. And Samantha says, has anyone tried fake meat or vegan cheese? She's put it in quotation marks. She says it's the work of the devil.
Cheers.
Well, there we are.
I agree.
All right, well, speaking of that, it's now time for our next debate. And JJ is going to make the case against or for, I can't remember.
When you said speaking about the devil there, I'm thinking, whoa.
Case for the devil.
Well, two words that I can't stand, net zero. And officially, a climate watchdog is telling our government that we should eat less meat and have less dairy. In fact, they want us to half it. They would like you to half the amount of meat and dairy you're having each week. So no more bacon butties, no sausage sandwiches, not even a nice juicy steak. And forget about having a bit of brie or some Stilton on the side as well. None of that. And they want you to, instead of having that, they want you to swap it out for vegan food. Veganism, plant-based. Veganism is the only word I dislike more than net zero, if I'm quite honest. Now, I don't want my government telling me what I can and can't eat. You can advise me. I'm not stupid. I know what's healthy. I know what's unhealthy. I don't need you to tell me, don't have this, and I definitely don't want you telling me to have vegan food, which we know can be overly processed and just as bad for you. However, having said that, we do have a lot of waste in this country. Around 270,000 tonnes of food wasted from supermarkets each year. That's about 350 million meals. So maybe we should have slightly less meat being sold, maybe we should have slightly less milk and dairy products being sold, and we've got a rising obesity problem in this country. So actually, I think it's a good thing. We know that having too much meat, too much red meat, can give you blood pressure. I'm sure Dr. Renee is going to correct me on that, but I'm sure your cholesterol levels, you've got to maintain them. So maybe having a little bit less, I'm actually OK with. Renee?
I like a bit of meat, Renee, do you?
Yeah. So do.
It's the way you're saying it.
Entirely intentional.
You know, I was totally with you until you started saying perhaps we should cut down on meat because, you know, meat makes you fat and all of this. So good quality, pasture-fed meat doesn't make you fat. What makes you fat is processed meat.
Like chicken nuggets.
That's chicken nuggets that's really got no chicken in it. You know, chickens, actually, that we're buying that are just full of water. You know, good quality meat doesn't make you sick. I hate this too, JJ, from the government, because if they really wanted people to not be obese anymore and not pass our taxpayers' money to solving the obesity problem with vaccines, they would actually teach people about a proper, healthy, raw, home-cooked diet that is as healthy as it can be. And don't get me onto cutting down dairy. Full-fat dairy is good for you. Reduced-fat dairy is bad for you because it's processed.
Well, the argument from people like Ed Miliband, were he, and I'm putting words into his mouth, but were he to have advanced this policy, he would say, well, actually, we have a growing population. Well, we don't. We don't. Well, we do, by virtue of immigration. And therefore, when cows, you know, apparently cows farting is a problem, and therefore eating less meat would be the solution to the climate crisis.
I'm sorry to sound like a broken record on this, but this will not make one jot of difference to global emissions, so it is purely symbolic. Let's get that out of the way first. But the other thing is, why are we talking about health here? This is a classic example of how the environment issue is never really about the environment. It's about changing the way that we live our lives.
It is.
Whether it be about, you know, Marxian wealth redistribution, whether it be about kind of ham-fisted health measures, masters environmental measures. This isn't about the environment. This is about an authoritarian government telling you what you can and can't do.
You can't get an Australian to talk about meat. Of course, he's going to support it. Throw a few more on the Barbie.
I just quickly want to say something. Have you heard of the carnivore diet?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think that's good for you?
I think if you're eating good, healthy meat, yes.
Yeah, because apparently if you just eat meat, your body doesn't lack any sort of vitamin, so you can get every single vitamin that you need through meat.
But then isn't this part of the problem though that a lot of people, especially working class families, can't afford to spend £25 on a really good steak. You're gonna have to buy the chicken nuggets and stuff because you want your kids to be full.
Right. So you don't. I agree with you and I disagree with you. I think, of course, people can't go and buy... I mean, I went and bought 7 lamb chops the other day. It cost me 35 quid because they were pasture-fed. However, you still don't have to give them chicken nuggets because you can buy a chicken quite cheaply and you can make that last for days. You can make soups, you can make stews, you can actually eke it out. But we have to teach people how to do that. If people don't know how to do that, that's where we should be concentrating our efforts.
That's a total failure if someone doesn't know, you know, how to put a lemon up a chicken's bottom and shove it in the oven.
Well, they don't.
Like,
they really don't.
It's a problem. Speaking of meat.
But you know what, we mustn't forget that Bill Gates now owns one of every 4 acres of farmland in America. Why?
Okie dokie. We'll leave that there. Still to come on the show, the big interview. We'll be speaking about those poppies. You won't want to miss that, my friends. You're watching the Saturday 5 and we're only on GB News.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we look ahead to Sunday, we will have outbreaks of rain in the northwest, brighter elsewhere, but it will be feeling chillier, especially compared to Saturday. Having a look at the bigger picture then, we have this cold front sinking its way south and eastwards, introducing some cloud and outbreaks of rain. That will linger across parts of northwest England into Wales, but as it sinks its way southwards, actually it will tend to fizzle out. So many places overnight tonight seeing largely clear skies and staying largely dry as well. But it will be feeling colder out there. We may even see some mist and fog, but also some pockets of frost, especially across the north to start Sunday morning. But for many of us, it is a bright start to the day, with the exception of the far north of Scotland, where we hold on to quite a few showers. Brighter further the east you go, and then across Northern Ireland, we've got cloudier conditions coming through into the west, but holding on to the clearest skies towards the far east. Elsewhere, though, many places are seeing plenty of sunshine to start Sunday morning. Maybe some mist and fog patches, but they'll soon clear away to leave much of England and Wales a fine Sunday with plenty of autumnal sunshine. But through the afternoon, it will be turning cloudier and gloomier across Northern Ireland into northwestern Scotland, with outbreaks of rain and a bit more of a breeze picking up too. Otherwise, for many of us, it's a chillier day out there, highs of 13 to 14 degrees, especially towards the south. But as we go through into Monday, it is going to be quite a gloomy, murky picture out there. A lot of low cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle. There may be some glimmers of sunshine just developing towards eastern areas. But as we go through Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll start to see higher pressure building. But there is a lot of cloud and some fog as well. Bye-bye.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. First, we'll give you £20,025 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you £5,000 to spend on all of your Christmas presents, with a further £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. You'll get it all in time for the big day. For your chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
We shouldn't have to do this, Rebecca. These men should have been compensated long ago.
They shouldn't have to fight for recognition. And this is what's happened over the last 72 years. So all the way through from the test through to the present day, they've known that something happened to them. They've seen what they've been through, their medical conditions, the fact that many of these servicemen died well before their time. And they were ignored in a way that other countries didn't ignore their similar testing veterans. So other nuclear powers across the world, the US, for example, compensated and recognised their nuclear testing veterans many, many years ago. Yet, unfortunately, successive governments in the UK failed to do that. After the long campaign for medallic recognition, finally, these servicemen received medallic recognition, but it came in a jiffy bag in the post, which is not the way to honour the service that these men gave to our country. There needs to be an understanding and an uncovering of the truth of what they actually went through. They've been fighting for many years for access to their medical records, for example, urine and blood tests that they know were taken during their service. But when many of these families have tried to access their records, these test results seem to be missing, and there's no explanation as to why this has happened.
What basis does the Ministry of Defence say it's not our responsibility?
Well, we know from other studies across the world and subsequent studies it showed, staggeringly that these men were exposed to the same amount of radiation as cleanup workers at Chernobyl.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Saturday night, and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes, along with Will Kingston, Renee Hundekam, Eunice Sadagiani, and JJ Anisiobi. Plenty more to come tonight, including that big interview where we'll be speaking to a veteran. There are many veterans getting in touch already about the Royal British Legion's Pride Poppy pin and other issues surrounding the Legion. It's 7 p.m, my friends, and this is the Saturday 5. Also to come tonight, we'll rattle through this week's top stories in Bunch of 5. Then we'll be answering your questions in Ask the 5, so send them through to gbnews.com/yoursay. Make clear it's for the Ask the 5, because sometimes I can't make that distinction. First of all, though, I'm not a very clever person. First of all, though, it is Saturday Night News with Lewis Mackenzie.
Thank you very much, Darren. Good evening. It's just after 7 o'clock. I'm Lewis Mackenzie here in the GB newsroom. There have now been 5 arrests made in London following a day of protests in the capital. The Met say 3 of the arrests were made at the Uniting the Kingdom demonstration. One for being in breach of the Public Order Act and a breach of the peace, and 2 for racially aggravated public order offences. The other 2 arrests were made at the Stand Up to Racism counter-protest. However, one of them has been de-arrested after she agreed to provide her contact details, having initially refused to do so. Downing Street says escalation is in no one's interest after Israel conducted precise strikes on military targets in Iran overnight. The strikes against the Iranian regime come after Tehran launched a barrage of more than 180 ballistic missiles at Israel 3 weeks ago. Terror group Hamas has condemned Israel's attack on Iran, calling it a violation of Iran's sovereignty and a threat to regional security. But the IDF says they'll do whatever is necessary to defend the state. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, says the UK is closely monitoring the situation and has warned Iran not to respond.
Israel does have the right to defend itself, but we are urging and have been urging all sides to show restraint. Iran should not respond. We will continue to work with allies to de-escalate the situation across the region.
A bit closer to home, the Prime Minister has denied he was plotting war against Middle Britain after suggestions that those who make income from property or shares do not fall within his definition of working people. It comes after the Chancellor Rachel Reeves said that Sir Keir Starmer is a working person and could be among those protected from the government's controversial tax hikes in the upcoming budget. Well, those have been your latest GB News headlines. I'm Lewis Mackenzie, but now it's back to the Saturday 5.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes and I can promise that you're in for another very lively hour. We're going to crack on with tonight's big interview, and lots of you are very, very animated about this particular issue. The Royal British Legion launched their annual Poppy Appeal this week. I've got mine. Apparently, you're supposed to wear it on the left, but when I wear it on the left, I've got this logo thing on my left, so it looks, you cannot see it. But anyway, I stand corrected. And I was looking through and I saw this Pride Poppy, and it got me thinking about all of this, because obviously we wear it ahead of remembrance events coming in the coming weeks. But the controversial launch of this Pride Poppy badge went on sale for £8. And I saw it on Amazon on their official store. And it comes as there have been reports that the Royal British Legion allegedly paid the LGBT plus charity, Stonewall, £10,000 when they were a member of their diversity championship. It's like a league table of woke, effectively. And a job advert circulated online recently too for a new head of diversity and inclusion at the RBL with a salary of more than £60,000, getting closer to 70 at least. Now, to me, every single penny of that money should be spent on veterans and on serving member of the armed forces and on memorials for our war dead, not on some diversity and inclusion officer. The Royal British Legion have said that they don't give any money to Stonewall, and they are not currently members of Stonewall's Diversity Champion scheme. The key word there, current. To discuss this, I'm pleased to welcome the military veteran and the former warrant officer in the SAS, Matthew Hellier. Matthew, thank you very much for your time. I mean, are you as animated by this as many of the veterans getting in touch with me are now? Because they're all saying this is the politicisation of the poppy, when the poppy should be entirely stripped from politics.
Well, I'm certainly annoyed at the commercialisation that the RBLI or the Royal British Legion seems to be having a monopoly over the poppy and over Remembrance Sunday. I think we're forgetting why we are here, why we wear the poppy, and some of the groups that have left their DNA across the battlefields from Agincourt to Afghanistan. My charity, the Pilgrim Bandits charity, we partner up with our poppy and we put our symbol next to the poppy. The poppy must always be paramount. It must always be paramount on our chest. It must always be paramount in our minds. You know, that the sacrifice that our soldiers have given us, you know, we have freedom of speech, we have democracy. They have fought the tyrants through the past and now in the present to allow us to express our feelings and our views in a free society.
Now, what would your message be to those that say, and I've had a lot of this feedback as well, people saying, well, look, I'm not going to give them money anymore. And my fear there with that is that people might actually stop wearing the poppy, which would, I think, be pretty heartbreaking, right? Because we must remember that sacrifice and what that entailed. And I fear that this kind of push, far from being inclusive, is entirely exclusive.
No, you're 100% right. We are, you know, we're getting mixed up. We're talking about the British Legion, right? I'm talking about the poppy and the sacrifice of my soldiers and my ancestors on the fields of Flanders, OK? There was so many LGBTQ plus soldiers that died to give us the freedom of speech, right? That was only allowed, you know, we were only allowed to have, our freedom within the military community, the LGBTQ society. That's only recent, right? No matter what colour, creed, religion you are, you have that right to express your views and your feelings. That poppy represents the reason why.
Yeah. I mean, one of our viewers says, just before I hand you over to the rest of the panel, the poppy seems to have gone inclusion crazy. When I was in the army, it was mostly, obviously, white British soldiers at that time. I don't suppose it's changed too much, so I don't know what the need to be inclusive to absolutely everybody. And, of course, it's an ever-expanding list of things that you've got to be inclusive over. So, you know, how many signs and slogans are going to be attached to the poppy in order to make it inclusive? And then you forget the message of what it actually represents, you know, across the piece.
I mean, we should all be extremely proud of this poppy that we all wear on our chest, and it's amazing to see everyone in GB News wearing this poppy. You know, that's great. Some of the other stations, you know, as not as forward-leaning as us and as patriotic as us, and that should always be, you know, that should be there. We must remember the poppy. This is, you know, this is our month to remember the people that give us the right to speak like we're speaking now. Give us the right to protest in London. What we must avoid is governments, like the government we have now, suppressing the freedom of speech.
Yeah.
When we grew up as children, we had Speaker's Corner. Now, if you get on Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park and you say the wrong thing, guess what? You're getting banged away.
Yeah.
All right? That is not right. We fought the right to speak.
Exactly, and that's a very important right, and that's what we're here to try and do. But Will, I hate when people say stuff like this, but I, as a gay man, do not think that I need to wear a poppy that has a flag attached to it in order to express the sentiment I want to express in wearing a poppy of remembrance. I'm worried that actually and I think commercialisation is a good word, but I worry that actually the entire panoply of diversity checkboxes that you've got to tick these days is actually making us weaker as a nation militarily, as well as weakening or watering down our act of remembrance.
Yeah, I agree with both of those things. And I'd actually follow up with Matthew on that very point. Do you see this, Matthew, as an isolated incident, or is this part of a wider woke agenda in the armed forces?
I think it's, using commercialisation again, it is, there is someone sat in the RBLI, the Royal British Legion, and they're coming up with ways to make money, right? We don't mind that too bad, but the money must be going back to the veterans. It's an absolute tragedy when we see an equality and diversity officer up for grabs for £70,000 a year. All right, there's many CEOs like me who volunteer my service, to give back to my veterans. All right, we're on pennies. Every penny that my charity gets from the public goes to a veteran. Right, the only people that I employ is injured veterans. I'm trying to build these guys, giving them the confidence.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what background they come from. They're part of my family, and I respect them so much.
Yeah, I mean, Trevor's written in, and Trevor says, I've donated to the Poppy Appeal for around 30 years, but I've actually now stopped my monthly donation. I don't agree with a lot of their latest views. Is that not the fear? I mean, do you think the charity have made a mistake here?
I don't think there's, excuse me, an issue with them having the LGBTQ plus flag on there, because it's going to potentially, that should open the market to some people who perhaps wouldn't have necessarily bought poppy before.
But what does it say about them if they're not willing to wear a poppy just because it doesn't have their latest fad flag on it?
I'm not saying if it's their fad or not. I'm just saying that if it opens it up to more people buying that poppy and more money then going towards the charity, I think that is a good thing. I don't think... I mean, and I have no military service in my family, so I'm not as attached to this as other people are emotionally. But I'm not sure people who fought for freedoms would be as angry about there being a flag attached to the poppy if the money raised from the sale of that poppy is still going to help people who are putting themselves in danger.
What if it made people who would normally send money to the British Legion stop? And I've seen lots of that online today. I'm no longer donating, and I think that's the issue, isn't it, Matthew?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, understandably so. But do you know what? That's your choice. That's why we fought, to give people choice, to give them options, to let them express themselves. And they could, so long as everyone wears that poppy on the chest, it doesn't have to come from the British Legion, right? They can make their own poppy. It's a show of respect. It's a show of the sacrifice that was left on the fields of Flanders by men, by women, by civilians, by animals. That is just absolute. That's what we should be doing.
But then the other point, Matthew, about the activities with Stonewall and getting on this leadership board, trying to actually, fight their way onto that. And there are a lot of companies, woke corporates who try to get on these lists. Stonewall, more recently, has been involved in actually pushing the medicalisation of children, for example, in the name of gender affirmation. Now, all of these things to you, mate, probably sound totally gobbledygook, and I don't blame you. But what I'm worried about is the association. When you start to associate the poppy with these deeply contentious political issues around kids, you're lost. You're totally lost.
I agree. We shouldn't politicise the poppy. The poppy is there for everyone to wear, everyone to be proud. And again, I just, express yourselves. That's what we fought for. That's what I fought, so you guys can have your freedom of speech, all right? And express yourselves however you want. But just please wear that poppy. Show the respect. We only ask for this month, for November. And that's what we show us the respect.
So, Matthew, do you see a difference between them using this rainbow flag and the black poppy that King Charles was worn previously, that he wore for the Commonwealth and indigenous communities who also fought in World War I and World War II?
No, not at all, not at all. But we again that is showing the respect to our the indigenous forces that gave their souls and gave their lives that we can have our freedom. Let's just draw ourselves back. The poppy was it wasn't just invented. It was taken from the poem by John McCrae, Colonel John McCrae, the Flanders Fields. Flanders Fields is not a poem about peace. It's a poem about sacrifice and the blood that we left on the battlefields. And you can express your way in any way you want. You can get on the streets of London. There's other countries, Iran, Russia. If you've done that in these countries, you're going to be banged away.
You know what?
Right?
One of my
proud of the country. Let's express it.
Exactly. One of my relatives was called Peter Grimes, and he was killed on the first day of the Battle of the Somme. And you sort of think, when you look back like that, just put yourself in the shoes of a boy like that, right? And then think, are we really focusing on the issues that matter here? That's what I want people to ask themselves. And this is what I want these charity bosses to ask themselves as well. Are we talking about the issues that matter? And I don't think we are. Matthew, thank you very much for your time there. That's the former warrant officer in the SAS, Matthew Hellier, and I do appreciate your contribution. Now, my friends, we contacted the Royal British Legion and they said this in a statement to us. We have no relationship with Stonewall, but we've worked with them in the past. We do not pay Stonewall money, and we can confirm donations to the Poppy Appeal will be used to support members of the armed forces community who need us. Diversity and inclusion is important to the RBL, and Stonewall were one of the organisations we spoke to about this area and how we can improve, and the RBL was part of Stonewall's Diversity Champions scheme for a period between 2018 and 2020.
Can I speak to
Of course, yeah.
OK, so this is what they do. They're really clever, Stonewall. They go into an organisation for a few years. They train up all the young staff to actually think in the way that they think. And then when they get flack and they have to withdraw, it doesn't matter anymore because the staff are there and do their work for them. They continue it.
And it was still on their website, Renee, it has to be said.
I just think it defeats the whole purpose of the poppy. So at one point are we going to stop? Every single group is going to have a flag. So every single person that's like, there's like Muslim people, black people, all kinds of different people that died.
Well,
but that's the whole point of the poppy.
I'm not even sure I support the black poppy either.
Well, I think the black poppy is quite interesting because these people can't think that they want to be black. They are black. It's your skin colour. That's what you are. This is not about their sexuality. It's about their skin.
I think it should just be one symbol to represent one thing.
Red, right? That, to me, is the fundamental
I think the sad thing is the poppy in the past has been something that unites all of us, that unites a country around a shared history.
We went totally... I nearly said swore there. It was totally mad.
But that's the point. Identity politics, by its very definition, divides us into groups, and that is fundamentally the opposite of the poppy.
OK, right. Still to come tonight, we're going to rattle through this week's top stories in Bunch of Five, including one professor controversial research that apparently reveals where the ugliest people in Britain live. If anyone messages in saying Newcastle, I won't be a friend. Next of all, though, it's time for the Saturday Scrap, and this week, Will and Dr. Renee are going to battle it out on whether the United Kingdom needs to get tougher on surrogacy, as Georgia Maloney has done in Italy. You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're talking catchphrases and jingles because, of course, instantly recognisable and sometimes a little annoying in the case of the Go Compare one, perhaps. An iconic advertising jingle can stay in your head all day and sometimes stand the test of time. Sound expert and music designer for some of the world's most renowned companies, Michael Boumendil, joins us now. Good morning, Michael. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
First of all, what is the secret ingredient, the secret recipe for a hit jingle that stands the test of time over the decades?
Well, I have to say the secret 100 years ago is not the secret today, because today all the brands are using music. So the first secret is to stand out, is to make something different, to do something interesting. The other thing I believe is to do something that is true to the brand, that is talking to you. You know, it's not only about the memorability, but it's about telling something about the brand. You know, when I hear you, your voice, your tone of voice says not only who you are, I can recognize your voice, but it says a lot about your mood, your personality. So the other reason why we make successful jingles is because they're catchy, because they're different, but also because they say something to us that is interesting, and finally keeping this link between the brand and the customers.
Michael, tell us about your involvement in the new Maybelline jingle. This makes me, I mean, I haven't heard it, but it makes me a little bit sad because I was an avid Maybelline concealer user for many years. Other brands are available, but the jingle was the main reason why I got bought into it.
You don't have to be sad, because we kept most of the legacy.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you very much for your messages about tonight's topics. One of you wrote it, and I've lost it now, I do apologise, I can't remember who it was, written in, and they said, the problem with Ed Miliband, he wants to ban meat, so he doesn't have to get pictured eating a bacon sandwich ever again. Good point, because he really made a meal out of that, and not in a good way. And then a lot of you are very, very irate about the poppy. Eileen says, red poppy for the blood spilt by the brave men and women who fought and died for freedom we enjoy today. It's end of the matter. There should be no further debate. It's a really contentious one. I must say, I think they've made a mistake here. Now, though, my friends, it's going to get hairy. It's time. Indeed, it's time for tonight's main event. Last week, the Italian government put tougher laws in place when it comes to surrogacy, with Giorgia Meloni criminalising Italian citizens who travel abroad to procure babies through surrogacy. But what of surrogacy in the United Kingdom? Well, campaigners such as Surrogacy Concern and Stop Surrogacy Now have strongly welcomed the move. So, in the UK context, is it time to have a crackdown of laws in the United Kingdom? Or is Italy's ban what some activists call inhumane and wicked? Where are you on that argument? Well, I know these two have an opinion, and they've got a gob to display it, I'll tell you that much. Seconds out, my friends. It's round one, and Will's going to take it away.
Yeah, I'd like to go first, please, Darren. I'd like to stick up for the rights of women before Renee unceremoniously junks those rights. Because this argument, this debate, is very simple. It is fundamentally a debate about the freedom of women. It is a debate that says that we believe that women should be allowed to do what they want to do with their own bodies, that they have the right to bodily autonomy. We think that is paramount, and we think that is something which, if you take the right of surrogacy away, you're effectively limiting. But it's so much more than that as well. It is a chance for women who are struggling with infertility to be able to overcome that, which can be crippling for families and crippling for relationships. It is a chance for gay couples to have a chance to have children, which again, surrogacy is one of the main vehicles to enable that to happen. This is all about freedom. And I think in a society where our freedoms are being taken away bit by bit, the least we can do is stick up for a freedom that promotes the family and promotes the rights of women.
So it's interesting that you're defending the rights of women when you've never actually given birth to a baby that you've grown for 9 months inside you.
Don't misgender me.
Because that's the real issue here. We're talking about a human. We're not talking about just a transaction and something gets exchanged like a bag of sweets at the end of it. We're talking about a baby. There is plenty of research to show that when babies are born, the moment that they're born, they recognise the mother's voice, the mother that's been talking to them. And there is suggestions from researchers that lifelong psychological harm can become a baby that is totally separated from that voice the moment it breathes air. The cells of a baby can be found inside a mother's brain decades after she has given birth. The connection between a woman and a child is more than just growing it, pushing it out and selling it down the market. When you consider in the UK that a third of all surrogacy pregnancies are actually made with the own woman's eggs, the woman who carries the child, it also means that at birth she is giving away her own child. That's a fact. And that's actually something that no woman is actually made for. You don't grow a baby, I've done it twice, give birth to it, and then just happily give it away. Most women that enter a surrogacy agreement are doing it because they need the money. It really comes down to finances. It's single mums who need to actually get themselves back on the straight and narrow. It's students who are trying to finance their way through university. Those are the kind of people who are doing it. So they might be doing it of their own free will, but they're not really because there's finances involved. And the rights of gay people, women that can't have children, sad as it is that they can't have children, they don't override the rights of another human being. We don't allow in the UK puppies to be taken from a female dog for 8 weeks. That's the law. You're not allowed to sell a puppy until it's weaned.
All right. I think we should actually create all our laws in the UK by analogy with the animal kingdom. I think that makes a heck of a lot of sense.
Well, hang on. Answer this question, Will, because Peter's written in, and Peter says it's called baby trafficking and it's on an industrial scale. Yeah.
Is that a question or a statement?
Well, it's a statement. But do you disagree with the statement?
Well, of course I disagree, because we're just assuming that women don't have the ability to make an informed decision. Like, I don't think saying that just because money is involved means that you can't make a rational decision. In that case, any employment agreement would be void. I think also the other thing around adoption, the other point around, which is the first point you made, Renee, which is to say this unique connection with a baby from the very moment it is born and then the impact that has later in life, invalidates adoption, for example.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because as a doctor, I've seen plenty of cases of adoptions that have happened literally at birth, and that child has severe psychological and other problems, sometimes even to the point where the parents give the baby back, that have happened in utero.
JJ, you're a dad. Could you imagine yourself in that scenario where, you know, you're handing over a child that's just been born and not feeling any attachment to that child? You know, obviously I'm not a dad, but you hear of that immediate attachment, that love, that bond that is there immediately, and it's spoken about in such a romantic almost way, but it's because it is so entirely profound.
Yeah.
Whose argument do you...
They both make good points. Speaking as a parent, the second my son was born, guts and blood everywhere still. Instant attachment. Have to hold him close to my chest with skin-to-skin contact. But with regards to adoption, and this is why I think I'm going to agree with Renee, there's so many kids in this world who need to be adopted. I think that should be the first port of call. And I think just because my son is my DNA and is my blood, I don't think it means that someone else can't love that child as much as I can and someone else can't raise that kid.
It is incredibly difficult to adopt in this country. In fact, in pretty much every Western country.
Yeah. I think surrogacy, the thing is, like, if a woman is giving birth to another woman's child, as you said, there is a bond, there's a deep biological bond to that child. So I just think
Who are you to say that? Who are you to say that? That is up to the woman to say, not to people sitting around the table to say.
I will read out a view that agrees with you on your incorrect opinion. Gary says it isn't just about the rights of women. Both men and women should have the right to determine what happens to their bodies.
Spot on, Gary.
I think you should be allowed. However, I just think that it's a way for celebrities now, like the Kardashians and stuff, to have like surrogacy, like they get someone else to get pregnant because they don't want to go through
the sites of Madonna and.
Yeah.
Can I give you an example of something that happened in the States just this week?
Yes.
A couple were having a baby via surrogacy, and the mother was 20 weeks pregnant. They discovered that she might have been drinking during her pregnancy, and they made her have a termination.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Exactly.
At 20 weeks.
And the thing is, like, when someone else is carrying your child, you have to have that person next to you. You don't know if they're going to be drinking, they're going to be taking drugs, or they're going to be in a good environment, because, you know, like, the baby has a very deep connection with the mother. So if it's under stress and stuff, it can affect the baby.
An ethical question from Grumpy Grandad. I've never heard his name before. He must be new. And Will, he says, I thought they were not allowed to earn money from it, because he says that's a different proposition.
Expenses.
Because that's when you're entering dangerous grounds, when it becomes a monetised activity.
I think you absolutely should be allowed to earn money from it. And I think in many cases this is an opportunity for... No, but this is... We're talking about, in many times, very disadvantaged young women who will struggle to make money in some other ways. And this provides an opportunity for them.
Humans.
Yes.
No, it's not. It is enabling people to have a choice over their own...
But I think it affects the people that carry the children as well.
Yes.
So when they give birth, that person is affected for the rest of their life, because they gave birth to someone else's child, so it mentally affects them.
That's their decision to make.
Of course.
That's their decision to make.
In this country, in the US, you can get paid for surrogacy. In this country, it can be paid in expenses. But I don't think we can say, oh, well, it's their decision to make. That doesn't mean that someone in a vulnerable position is able to make the right decision.
Well, hang on then. Show of hands, who agrees with Giorgia Meloni that it ought to be curtailed in the United Kingdom?
I don't think it should be curtailed, but I'm not in favour of it. I don't know how to... It's like...
Keir Starmer.
I'm a libertarian.
Have you got splinters in your bottom?
No, the thing is, I'm a libertarian. I think people should choose what they want to do with their bodies. However,
even if they're under the influence of poor...
That's an argument for better regulation.
No, but then the thing is, it's a whole, like, abortion argument, you know?
Not. Still ahead. Send in your questions for us to answer in Ask the Five. I've got lots of questions, some of them involving Rachel Reeves's copper tresses. You won't want to miss that. Next of all, though, it's time for Bunch of Five, where we'll cover the week's top stories, including Labour's view on pigeon racing, a controversial new study which suggests where the ugliest people in Britain are from. Can you guess where it is? You're with the Saturday Five, and we're live on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we look ahead to Sunday, we will have outbreaks of rain in the northwest, brighter elsewhere, but it will be feeling chillier, especially compared to Saturday. Having a look at the bigger picture then, we have this cold front sinking its way south and eastwards, introducing some cloud and outbreaks of rain. That will linger across parts of northwest England into Wales, but as it sinks its way southwards, actually it will tend to fizzle out. So many places overnight tonight seeing largely clear skies and staying largely dry as well. But it will be feeling colder out there. We may even see some mist and fog, but also some pockets of frost, especially across the north to start Sunday morning. But for many of us, it is a bright start to the day, with the exception of the far north of Scotland, where we hold on to quite a few showers. Brighter further the east you go, and then across Northern Ireland, we've got cloudier conditions coming through into the west, but holding on to the clearest skies towards the far east. Elsewhere, though, many places are seeing plenty of sunshine to start Sunday morning. Maybe some mist and fog patches, but they'll soon clear away to leave much of England and Wales a fine Sunday with plenty of autumnal sunshine. But through the afternoon, it will be turning cloudier and gloomier across Northern Ireland into northwestern Scotland, with outbreaks of rain and a bit more of a breeze picking up too. Otherwise, for many of us, it's a chillier day out there, highs of 13 to 14 degrees, especially towards the south. But as we go through into Monday, it is going to be quite a gloomy, murky picture out there. A lot of low cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle. There may be some glimmers of sunshine just developing towards eastern areas. But as we go through Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll start to see higher pressure building, but there is a lot of cloud and some fog as well. Bye-bye.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Budget Day on GB News on Wednesday. Stay with us all day for the most anxiously anticipated budget in a generation.
Morning through to evening, we'll be here with insight and analysis, crunching the numbers
as we work out the cost to the country and, most importantly, to you.
Because the Chancellor has a bill to pay. The question is...
who's going to pay it? Budget Day all day Wednesday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you very much for your emails about tonight's topics. I'm afraid I have Amanda is very angry with me for reading out Grumpy Grandad once again. So, Amanda, if you email me something in, I promise to read it out. I'm sorry I've made you so angry. But then on the discussion that we've just been having, Howard Marks says, who is a member, thank you, Howard, trying to adopt in the UK is extremely difficult. Surrogacy offers lots of couples who want a child but are unable to. It's a private issue between the surrogacy mother and the couple. But then Susan says, Renee is right, in my opinion. The baby's rights trump the selfishness of the adults. So, well, there we are. And then Greg has sent in a very good Ask the Five question, which I have passed forward, Greg. But I'll be accused of anyone with a G, apparently, starting in their name. I've got favouritism for you. It's just because I see the comments coming in as and when I see them. It's a pretty small...
And it's his granddad.
Well, from beyond the grave. Right, now, though, it's time for this. Yes, Willie, what have you got?
That joke never gets old, Darren. Look, I thought that Labor had alienated literally every segment of the British population, but I was wrong. It turns out that they had missed the pigeon-fancying community, at least until this week. Robin Swan, an Ulster Unionist MP, who I've done a bit of reading on this morning, he's made his life's work basically to promote the noble cause of pigeon racing. He's asked the Commons to investigate whether pigeon racing can be formally made a sport in the United Kingdom, which comes with tax benefits. The aptly named for this conversation Minister for Sport, Stephanie Peacock, was having none of it. Pigeon racing is not recognised as a sport by Sport England, and I have no plans to discuss it with the pigeon fanciers of England. This is another shameful attack on the pigeon fancying community from a Labor government that seems to have it in for the birds. I'm against it. I think pigeon racing should be a sport. But what do you think, Five?
I come from an area with a lot of pigeons, and I think they're an absolute menace.
But are these racing pigeons?
Yeah, well, no,
they're a very particular pigeon.
A pigeon's a pigeon, surely, isn't
Oh, no, there's a lot of...
Have you ever eaten pigeon? I think it's delicious. I really do. Not because I've killed one on my street.
You're going to get so much hate now.
Oh, well, a pigeon.
But what's the difference between pigeon racing and horse racing, which is considered a sport?
You can't ride a pigeon.
Well, the big pigeon, I suppose, give it a crack. Game of Thrones could be a Game of Thrones spin-off.
I feel like you've got like outside, the Milan Cathedral, where the pigeons come and they just come and stand on your arms and stuff. So I feel like we should just incorporate.
So down to earth. Yeah. The Milan Cathedral.
The one outside, I'm saying it happens. So I feel like pigeons are one of these species that have sort of incorporated themselves into.
I think it was a travesty when they stopped pigeons landing on children in Trafalgar Square. It's a rite of passage for children to have pigeons on their heads.
Have you ever been passed on?
It's lucky.
Disgusting. Well, I grew up in an area called Bridie Hill, It's in the West Midlands, and pigeon racing there was pretty normal. Lots of people had pigeon coops in the back garden.
I'd watch pigeon racing, and I've got a thing for Ulster Unionists as well.
So it's me now. I'm gonna big up a farmer this week who took the law into his own hands. He had a couple of tearaways, just rampaging over his land with their electric vehicles. I think they were quad bikes, and he locked them in so that they couldn't get their bike back. And then there you can see them tied up. Apparently that's called a hog tie. He then drove them 4 miles to the local police station and handed them over to the police, whereby he was arrested for kidnapping 2 people and taking them on his vehicle. But I say, good for the farmer. More vigilantes, we need them.
Well, hang on, because it is an ongoing criminal investigation now, so we do have to be careful about what we say on that, I'm afraid. Yes, actually, to be honest with you, I think it's probably best that we leave people to decide themselves what they think about it. Yes, it's...
Trying to leave?
No, that's quite all right. I'm going to talk about ugly people now.
We haven't alienated enough people already on the show.
You know, I see an ugly person every morning.
Well...
But my friends, scientists have discovered where the ugliest people in Britain actually reside. And, you know, a place famed for its rugged coastline, its love of leeks, former coal mines, and Tom Jones. And it's Wales, you know, apparently a hotspot for less attractive Brits. This is according to one US scientist who's controversially suggested uglier people migrate to places like Wales. What a horrible thing to say. That's what I say. In more positive news for the English, though, the southeast attracts a lot of good-looking and repels the bad-looking.
Oh, yeah. Harry Redknapp.
Oh. Is that because they've got more money? As in, like, apparently the more attractive you are, the more disposable income you have.
Yeah.
There is a direct correlation between those. You must be penniless.
The most attractive people are usually immigrate to the richest areas, so they're not going to go.
Going to say the most attractive people are immigrants.
No, I'm just but they are because they immigrate to the richest areas. Like look at London, Miami, LA, and you see the suburban areas like where people don't want to immigrate. Obviously, over time, you're going to have like a decrease of value, as you say.
Catherine Zeta-Jones was Welsh. Is Welsh, isn't she?
Yeah.
So she left.
Yeah.
So was that goal that end up now, apparently. Listen, I think Wales is beautiful. And the Welsh people voted to leave the European Union, so they have a special place in my heart. Eunice, what have you got for us?
So the Washington Post, for the first time, didn't endorse Kamala Harris, which sparks the question, should the establishment publications automatically endorse the Democratic candidates, or the establishment candidate, I should say, because we have a lot of Democrats, previous Democrats, such as Elon Musk, such as Tulsi Gabbard, such as RFK Jr., that are lifelong Democrats that are now switching to the Republican Party. And I don't think this is necessarily a Republican versus Democrat debate. It's more a populist versus the establishment. And we have a populist candidate, which is Donald Trump, and we have an establishment candidate, which is Kamala Harris. And that's why there's a debate, because the Washington Post usually backs the establishment candidate, but on this occasion they haven't. So why do you think that is?
Yes, it is an interesting question, isn't it? I mean, some cynical people, Eunice, might well say, well, Jeff Bezos, formerly of Amazon, isn't endorsing a candidate because he doesn't want to pay taxes for Kamala Harris, because the Washington Post is left-leaning, so their natural home would be in the Democrats, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
so is this all him trying to save a bob or two? He's got plenty of it.
To some extent, but then you also have Mark Cuban that's campaigning really hard for Kamala Harris, and he's a billionaire. But I just think... No.
The campaigning for Trump, though.
For Trump, on the other side. Yeah, but the thing is, like, naturally, you wouldn't think that billionaires would be supporting Democrats, because... people like Kamala Harris are saying we should tax, the billionaires, and there shouldn't be a billionaire class. So I just think it's a bit...
This is so fun to watch, though, because the left in America are so used to the mainstream media doing everything they can to push their candidate, and when it doesn't quite go their way, they have an absolute and total meltdown.
What's funny is that actually majority of the money is behind the democratic party. And the billionaires and all the corporate, and they're the ones saying, well, we should tax the rich and tax the corporations.
All right, JJ, before I get to you, one of my colleagues has written in, and one of my colleagues says, Darren, this is why you moved back up north, away from the attractive southeast.
Close colleague?
Yes, actually. I've never been more aggrieved. Don't say you agree, JJ.
It makes sense.
You agree.
It makes sense, mate.
All right, JJ, what have you got for us?
The AA calling for a ban on new drivers having passengers in their cars, young passengers, and I think that's a good thing. Drivers under 25 make up the largest proportion of people involved in accidents. They also want people who are new drivers, which are mostly young boys, who are involved in accidents. If you don't have a seatbelt on, they want you to get 6 points automatically on your licence. I think it's a really good idea. I certainly was a rascal when I got my licence at age 18. I was a rascal, yeah. I wasn't a very good driver. When you got your mates in the back of the car and they're all egging you on, oh, go a bit faster, do this, you're tempted to do it. So I think good.
I think good, and I think they should go further. I think when young boys and girls pass their driving test, they shouldn't be allowed to buy more than a 1 litre car for 2 years.
Oh. Why? What's the aim?
The power.
The power of the engine, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Darren, do you drive?
No. My mother says you were born to be driven, pet.
Yeah, but also I think that, this whole insurance thing, like if you're under the age of 25...
It's expensive.
It's more expensive, and it depends how many years you've had your licence for. But I don't want to give away things that I've done before, but like I've done a lot of things with my car.
Marianne has written in and said, Darren, you are neither ugly on the outside or the inside. Look in the mirror and tell yourself every morning, hello, beautiful.
Marianne.
From blind viewer, Marianne.
Tell my boss that. Because it was my boss that wrote that very rude.
Oh! Yeah. I like how we were talking about a debate about cars and Darren abruptly ended it. No, but sure, the show isn't all about you. That's...
You should hear the things that come out of your mouth, especially when it's attractive young women.
So everyone agrees with me that the AA is good and we should be...
Yes.
Absolutely not.
What? Why not?
But I don't think we've got time for a debate. But I think kids are already socially isolated, are seeing friends less. I think there's a crisis amongst young people in that regard. This will make them more isolated.
All right. Now, still ahead, my friends. We're going to answer all of your questions in Ask the Five. No topics are off limits unless it's to do with my looks. I wonder what you've got in store for us this week. You're with the Saturday Five, live on GB News.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The former royal correspondent for the Sun newspaper, Charles Ray. Good to see you this morning, Charles, and so good to see Catherine back to work with a hug.
It is. It's fantastic. I mean, there are a few royal jobs that touch at the heartstrings, and this is certainly one of those. And I think it's the first time we've actually seen Catherine back in a royal duty since she herself confirmed that she'd finished chemotherapy.
Done so much, haven't they, the Princess of Wales and the King, to raise awareness for these cancers.
Here we have both the King and Catherine having, explained to the nation and the rest of the world that they were battling or are still battling cancer, just like everyone else.
How sincere is all of this? I mean, it looks it looks like she's a wonderful, kind, caring woman, but I don't know. I've never met her.
Well, she is a wonderful, kind, caring woman. That is without a shadow of a doubt. And William heard about this young lady on a visit to the air ambulance, and they invited her because she's a photographer, so she wanted to take. She has a bucket list and wanted to take pictures of an investiture. I mean, make no mistake, people like Catherine are just absolutely wonderful in what they do and how they do it. I mean, and Catherine is the superstar of the royal family. Of that, there is no doubt.
It's the cockles of my heart, Charles. It really does. It's really good to see you. Thanks very much.
All the
Thanks,
best.
Charles. Thanks. And Liz, who is this 16-year-old amateur photographer who was hugged by Princess of Wales yesterday, has said it was a dream come true.
I bet it was.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you very much for your messages about tonight's topics. Speaking of, though, it's time for this. I have to read out. Oh, well, we've gone back to. You were about to fight each other again. I can see Will get about to shake Renee. I'm joking. He didn't actually do that. Please don't write in to domestic abuse charities or anything of that. But Barbara wrote in. I just want to read out this cheeky one. She says, JJ laughs so freely, he should be on the right. Lefties are usually humourless.
You're right.
I found quite funny. Right. Sandra, though, has written in, and Sandra says, how do you, the 5, define working people? I would just like to say our king working person. I think he would say he works, and Princess Anne, they say, is the hardest working person. Well, actually, Princess Anne works a lot. She always has. God bless her. I would define is it work, how you define working class or how you define a working person? Because, you know, to argue, and actually on this very channel, the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, Lord Lamont, thank you, Lamont, said, and it was talk about a red box, that's what got Julian Clary in trouble with Julian Lamont. But anyway, I digress. Lamont said that actually to say that pensioners aren't working people when they've worked all of their lives, well, is that not deeply offensive to pensioners, right? To argue that they're some kind of lazy bum.
Yeah. This is the thing, we shouldn't be defining it at all. It's a despicable term that's just aimed to stoke up class warfare in a country which should be past the whole class envy thing, but it's a Labor government that wants to bring that back, unfortunately.
Well, it's Marxist.
Eunice, apparently I've not let you get a word in edgeways, so you're going to have to speak more. He's deeply hungover, my friends. That's the truth of it.
Yeah, I was at a great party yesterday at Home House. It was a great Halloween party, so yeah. But I was going to say, the whole working class debate, I think it's about how much you earn. It's like if you earn under $2,000 per month, you're considered working class. So I think it's just how much you earn per year. But at the end of the day, I feel like the working class and the middle class are getting poorer, whilst the rich are getting richer. So I think that's what's happening right now.
I think there's a big difference between working class and working people, and I think Starmer's confused the two there.
Well, I think he's doing it. It's a deliberate euphemism because working class is now used by Marxist lecturers as unacceptable, but working people is somehow acceptable.
Oh, well, it's so he can get away with rinsing. We're all. That's what's coming. Anyway, Mr. O'Sullivan, I assume, or could be Mrs. O'Sullivan, asks this. Darren, recently it was Chocolate Week. So what's your favourite chocolate and tipple combo? Oh. I don't know I ever think I need a tipple when I'm having chocolate, do you?
Yeah.
No. My favourite chocolate has always got caramel in it somewhere.
Mine has got orange.
Oh.
Yeah, I really like
that. Apparently they say dark chocolate is good for your brain. If you actually, it makes you think better and stuff, so...
Tastes rubbish, but it's...
Yeah.
Oh, no, I like dark chocolate, actually. Yeah.
Oh, really?
I don't know. My big thing with chocolate is it has to be frozen. I put all my chocolate in the freezer.
Like your heart.
What?
That's my heart. That's exactly right.
Is this because you're an Australian?
Not everything comes back. I was saying before that apparently racial stereotyping is fine if you're from Australia. Apparently no elsewhere, but in Australia, racial stereotyping, absolutely fine.
All right, Tony says this. Do you think it's time for a snap election? The reason I say this is because our country will not last 5 years. JJ, do you regret your vote for Sir Keir Starmer?
How? Starmer?
Sorry.
Oh, very... How did I voted for him? Okay, I did vote for Starmer. I did, because my local MP is Labour, and she's very, very good. So that's why Labour got my vote this time.
Do you regret it?
Do I regret it? Yes, but he's not had enough time. Let's judge him after 6 months.
All right. OK. Well, I'll judge him after 6 minutes. Anyone else? Snap election?
I'd love there to be a snap election. Love it.
I think Reform would do very well, you know.
Renee, honest question. What do you think the result would be?
I think Reform would do so well that it could possibly be hung, or a very small majority for Labour. And it's their majority that makes them so dangerous.
I think the only way Reform are getting in is if they have the if we change proportional.
PR. Right, OK, my friends. Next up, it's the brilliant Leo Kirst with the Saturday Night Showdown. Thanks for watching and thanks for your questions. I've enjoyed your company enormously, especially Grumpy Grandad. We'll see you again next week.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we look ahead to Sunday, we will have outbreaks of rain in the northwest, brighter elsewhere, but it will be feeling chillier, especially compared to Saturday. Having a look at the bigger picture then, we have this cold front sinking its way south and eastwards, introducing some cloud and outbreaks of rain. That will linger across parts of northwest England into Wales, but as it sinks its way southwards, actually it will tend to fizzle out. So many places overnight tonight seeing largely clear skies and staying largely dry as well. But it will be feeling colder out there. We may even see some mist and fog, but also some pockets of frost, especially across the north to start Sunday morning. But for many of us, it is a bright start to the day, with the exception of the far north of Scotland, where we hold on to quite a few showers. Brighter further the east you go, and then across Northern Ireland, we've got cloudier conditions coming through into the west, but holding on to the clearest skies towards the far east. Elsewhere, though, many places are seeing plenty of sunshine to start Sunday morning. Maybe some mist and fog patches, but they'll soon clear away to leave much of England and Wales a fine Sunday with plenty of autumnal sunshine. But through the afternoon, it will be turning cloudier and gloomier across Northern Ireland into northwestern Scotland, with outbreaks of rain and a bit more of a breeze picking up too. Otherwise, for many of us, it's a chillier day out there, highs of 13 to 14 degrees, especially towards the south. But as we go through into Monday, it is going to be quite a gloomy, murky picture out there. A lot of low cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle. There may be some